What's going on, everybody? So we're in Şanlıurfa, Turkey right now, about to go on an awesome adventure retreat. And I thought I'd take this time to address some of the comments that came in last video. So for those who aren't aware, I just uploaded a short podcast clip with Adam from Psych Substance about antidepressants. I guess the problem about uploading such a small 4-minute clip on a very complicated issue is, well, it's problematic, and it's definitely my bad for not, I guess, clarifying my perspective and maybe adding something at the beginning or the end, because like I said, this is a very complicated subject and it's a little bit more nuanced than just saying antidepressants are good or they're bad. And of course, I'm not a doctor, and there's a reason why I would never tell anyone who is on antidepressants to get off them, because human neurochemistry is different for everybody. What's medicine for one person can be poison for another. And I guess I shouldn't have framed it as like, is it a scam? Because, well, and it kind of depends on your definition of scam. So before I get into kind of reading and responding to some of the comments, especially from apparently there's an MD who's prescribed hundreds of these things, so he'd definitely have a much deeper perspective on this issue than what I would, But just let me start off by clarifying what I mean by scam, and that's something that gets sold as something that is beneficial for most people when a lot of people kind of get screwed. It's sort of like pyramid schemes, I suppose, right? I think a lot of us would agree that it is a scam insofar that it screws most people, or I don't know about most people, but definitely many people who go into it. But to say that business models such as multi-level marketing screws everybody over would be inaccurate, because I personally have friends who have become quite wealthy, right? And financially well off and have built a life from this business model. So it'd be unfair for me to use the word scam as a blanket term, but yeah, I guess this is kind of where I was framing it in a sense that it's a scam insofar that I think personally that antidepressants are overprescribed. And I've personally known many of my friends, more than not, who have kind of gotten screwed over. They kind of leave from this long cycle of taking antidepressants every day as kind of numbed emotions, or they might even become more depressed over time. But of course, obviously these things can help certain people in certain situations. It's like I said in the short clip, or I think I did. I definitely said it in the podcast. I'm not so sure if I'd said it in that particular video, but I did say that for certain people in a very dark situation, they can be very helpful. And some people are, I don't know, how do I say this without sounding mean, but I guess biologically impaired, they might actually have a very low production of serotonin. And of course, there are many different modalities that can help with this. But sometimes the simple stuff it's not that it doesn't work, but it doesn't give them the results that they're looking for. And sometimes antidepressants can help someone who, let's say, who's like suicidal or can't get up out of bed from the morning. And maybe that taking a medication like that can kind of at least give them a little bit of a boost to have energy enough so they can work out, so they can eat healthy, so they can interact with people, so they can work on their purpose. And then that leads them to more serotonin, right, from more natural sources, and they become better over time. Then they can wean off these pills. So when I say that I'm against antidepressants, like, I know that I shouldn't have to say this, but people from the internet kind of get the wrong idea about things. But when I say anything like that in an absolute term, it's obviously for me. In my subjective experience, I'm against antidepressants for myself. And there was a time where I was very close. I was actually quite suicidal and depressed, and I just didn't want to take them. That was just my personal choice. And when I look at my life now, it's not like it couldn't be better, because obviously life can always get better, but it's freaking awesome. I genuinely love my life. I have good friends, good family, I'm getting married, I eat healthy, I get to travel, I get to actually do what I want virtually. And I think that going through those dark nights of the soul, or learning to deal with those shadow counterparts of my psyche, it really helped me over time. But it wasn't easy. But I understand that in certain situations, people can be in a much even darker space than that, right? Where they can't even get out of bed. I was like that too. I couldn't even get out of bed. But I don't know. Maybe, who knows? I could go back in time, and if I took them, I would have sped up my recovery process, but I also know myself and I've got a very addictive personality, and I probably would have relied on these things too much. And I don't know. And I guess on the other hand, when people say like, why would I listen to some guy on YouTube, which I never, you guys should never just straight up listen to me. You know, I'm a human being with faults, and I'm not going to get everything right 100% of the time. But at the same time, I think it can be dangerous in certain situations to only listen to a doctor with a white lab coat, because if you always look back throughout history, there's always been times, especially in the psychiatric field, well, I don't know, well, you know, we're doing lobotomies and all sorts of messed up stuff and overprescribing people with all sorts of drugs that they didn't need. And does this mean that all doctors are bad and they're in with big pharma? It's like, no, I think that everyone does the best that they can with what they know. And over time, as science progresses, especially pharmacology, psychology, and all these kind of things, we learn from our mistakes. Now, of course, certain organizations might have that business model that's built around prescribing a certain medication, and I can see that in maybe certain situations it can corrupt things a little bit and maybe slow down progression, especially when it comes to more natural modalities or alternate sorts of practices that can help with mental health issues. But I don't know, man. Really, only time will tell. I could be a moron for even talking about this subject, or who knows, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years time from now, I could be completely right about these things. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm not omniscient. I don't really know until the time comes, but sometimes it can be a little bit too late for some people. And again, by scam, it means that many people get screwed over by it. It doesn't mean that it's a scam like in an absolute way. I don't know what the percentage is of antidepressants and how many people they actually help long term, or and I guess it's not even a question of does it help you, is it the frame that I'm coming from is more, is it the best solution that exists right now? And sometimes we have to go outside the psychiatric model, but then that can be dangerous for certain people. So it's like, again, it's a very nuanced, complicated topic, but I did want to respond to some comments. So I pinned this one by Daijin's couple. I hope I pronounced that properly. As an MD who has prescribed different antidepressants probably hundreds of times, let me tell you that there is no simple answer to this, and it's definitely not a scam. I have witnessed patients who did a complete 180 turnaround in their life after some weeks on the drug, others where it didn't really do anything, and some who actually got worse. Like with every other medical condition, there is a huge individual component to it. A lot of these things are determined by the individual psychology and the narrative and the context that they grew up with. You know, it's a little bit more than just pure chemicals, you know, which of course is an important factor as well. Yes, there are issues with long-term use and discontinuation, but even that is again a very complex topic. Psychedelics will definitely play a main role in the future of psychiatric treatment protocols, but let's be careful about the sometimes naive optimism that comes from the psychedelic counterculture side. Absolutely. I definitely think that there is going to be some problems with that, like anything in life, because if we just prescribe everyone psychedelics, well, there is going to be a certain percentage of people who are going to have a psychotic breakdown or potentially get worse. You know what I mean? So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Anyone who has a sufficient amount of experience with high-dose hallucinogens know that the path between healing a mental disorder or causing one can be very small. 100% agree. It's like walking a razor-thin line, especially when you're playing around with psychedelics, especially in the context of a pre-existing condition. Also, the integrative process is at least as important as the trip itself. Yeah, for sure, something I've preached on this channel for many years now. Let's be cautious and take the right path step by step. That's what I recommend. Yeah, for sure. Again, like with many of these complex subjects, there is a lot of nuance. I don't know, I guess it's hard to express nuance, especially in such a short clip and, you know, with two people talking. It's not just me, because I can't speak for Adam, and I guess I should have definitely been more clear where I say that I'm against antidepressants. It's that, number one, I'm against it for myself, and two, I'm against antidepressants as the be-all, end-all, best treatment for depression and these, you know, and other mental disorders. I think there are more effective modalities out there, and I'm not just talking about psychedelics, but again, this is something that Needs to be more research, I suppose, but I don't know. But we also have to be careful with appeal to authority as well, because like I said before, it's not that we've been wrong before. I feel like we're wrong more often than we're right. It just takes time to truly realize this, and human pride gets in the way, especially when we dedicate our entire lives towards a certain field. So of course we're going to have all these confirmation bias and look for the positive of this, because it hurts the human ego to be like, oh shit, I was wrong. I just spent all these years in this psychiatric field. I'm not saying it's all wrong, but I like psychology and therapy and all that kind of stuff. But psychiatry, I've always had a bit of a, I don't know, we'll just leave it at that, because at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't really matter, but I'm just gonna share it anyway, just with the disclaimer of listen to your doctor, don't get off your drugs, blah, 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 blah. But on the other side, I got a lot of, I'm not gonna read all the comments, but I got many comments, anecdotal evidence from people who say that it made me worse, numbed my emotions, I got more depressed afterwards, etc., etc., etc. And then on the other side of that, I read one who says, as someone who has taken SSRIs for over a year, it saved me. My anxiety reduced to the point where I can actually have a conversation. Gone are the days of being lethargic all day and just being locked in a downward spiral of depression. It's more than a band-aid, it's a tool and should be treated as such. The title is clearly targeted towards like-minded individuals that are against psychopharma. Yeah, for sure. I don't know, it's like playing the game of like, I kind of did on purpose make it a bit controversial than what the conversation really was. I'm not like completely against big pharma, but I'm not for it either. So I think I probably lean more towards there's a lot of dodginess going on, because you know it's a business model. This person who's saying that it saved me so you can actually live a life, like it would be very arrogant of me to just disacknowledge his experience, because I'm me. I can only know myself from my subjective experience, and friends and colleagues that I've met personally who have shared this kind of stuff. And I don't know, I feel like more people than not who I've met in my personal life, you know, living in Australia, Melbourne, the world's a big place, so this isn't like saying that this must be the case all over the world. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But most people who I've met who have gone on these, especially long term, even though they say that it really helped them during the time, a lot of them end up receiving the negative end of the pole. That's certain individuals, because I also know, well, not personally, but just from anecdotal comments, I suppose, on YouTube and emails and messages and stuff like that, I've known people who have greatly benefited from it. But I think that's in more extreme situations. But at the same time, I feel like these things are overly prescribed, like, you know, ADHD medications, and I was supposed to be put on that as a child, and my mother's hippie friend threw them in the bin. And of course, a lot of people would say that's the most irresponsible thing in the world. You just fucking destroyed that kid's life, or whatever, you know, whatever polarized perspective you may have on this topic. But looking at hindsight as, you know, a 30-year-old man who's had quite a lot of life experience and a lot of lows and highs, I'm glad that I wasn't on medication, because it forced me to look at other ways, you know, to kind of use my ADHD as a superpower. But, and it's a big but, that's just me. I'm an individual with a unique experience in biochemistry, and maybe for someone else that could have been the worst thing they could have done. Just my pure instinct and intuition. I don't know if giving kids drugs is a good idea. And I'm sure, again, I know a lot of people say like, yeah, but you should listen to a doctor. Do you have a degree in this? Do you have a degree in that? But then, I don't know how many doctors and PhDs and all these academics with all these qualifications who are saying the exact same thing that I am. When they speak out against it, it's like, oh, they're quacks. You know what I mean? So I don't really buy the whole, oh, if you have a qualification in something, therefore you're correct on it, or you're more educated on the matter, because people only seem to say that when they align with the collective narrative. But let me just say that in many times there are a lot of quacks. This doesn't mean that I'm all about, you know, naturopathy and alternate medicine and all that kind of stuff, because a lot of that is bullshit from my perspective. It could be real, maybe the science hasn't caught up yet, I don't know. I really don't. And at the end of the day, I think if something works for you, and you use it as a tool, not a band-aid, and you learn to integrate these experiences, then yeah, of course, a lot of these drugs can be very beneficial. Psychedelics are the same. If you use that as a band-aid or as escapism, then it can have catastrophic effects. See, one person said, I've tried 3 different types of SSRIs. It totally shut me off emotionally, which may be good for some, but for me, it was making me even more depressed. Also, I wasn't able to hear music anymore, and I'm a musician. That was after about 1 year on the same med, because that was what the doctor said. I had to be patient and try for some time. They finally made me happy though. When I quit them and found out that it wasn't a permanent change, music came back to my life, fortunately. One of my good friends who was on anxiety medication as well, and he said to me, I remember when he first got on them, I was like, yeah, they're helping me. I was, getting like really bad panic attacks and super anxious all the time and really couldn't live my life. And then skip 3-4 years later, he told me straight up, like, dude, they made it so much worse. They numbed me out. I ended up being more anxious, and then getting off them, the withdrawal effects were just insane. But then once he got over that hump, he got much better. I don't want to spread polarizing views on a complex topic. This is why topics like this, I need to talk about it for a little bit more than just 4 minutes, just very briefly talking about it in a very surface level way. We didn't go deep into it. But that being said, if there are any MDs or kind of doctors in this field, or anyone that you know who would be keen to jump on the podcast so we can actually have an in-depth discussion with an expert, man, I'm down. I'm absolutely keen for having a conversation like this. I think it would be very enlightening for a lot of people. But I would ask for you guys not to disacknowledge people's experiences, no matter if they have good experiences with antidepressants or bad experiences, because everyone's subjective experience is valid. And even if something works via placebo, like, as long as it has practical change, not just diluted change of like you think that you're doing better, but then over time you realize, oh shit, actually I was going on a downward slope. But I think it's very important to not disregard people's entire life experience. Everyone's experience is everyone's experience. Everyone has victories, pain, suffering, and they go through ups and downs, and I think that we can learn a lot, even from anecdotal evidence, because if you see the same story play out over and over and over again, I mean, I don't know, I don't think patterns lie. And with this particular topic, man, you got so many people who get messed up from this stuff, and at the same time you have a lot of people who gain benefit from it. But there isn't a study that kind of measures every single person's life experience. It's only those who go into a study where they measured the results and they kind of observe them over a long period of time, but not everyone does that. Not everyone who has a negative experience with these drugs go on a scientific journal. Same with the positives. It's up in the air, man, and this is relatively a new field. I mean, even psychiatry, it's not that old, man. So I just wanted to make this video to clarify my perspective. But there was one guy who said like, oh, I'm sick of these white people making these kind of videos. And I know that it shouldn't matter, but just for the record, because I feel like a lot of people just think I'm just some random white guy, but I'm actually Latino. I'm not just a privileged white dude born in Australia. I'm like first generation immigrant parents, and I got made fun of my whole life. Went through a lot of racist experiences, so I don't know. It kind of hurts when people now, they're like, oh, you're a white guy. It's like, man, where were you when I was a kid? I would have loved to be white. So I didn't get made fun of so much, but whatever. I just wanted to, totally irrelevant, but at the same time, just wanted to address that. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Share your thoughts below, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.